Welcome back, I'm George, and this is the complete review for the Google Pixel 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL. In this video, I'm going to cover all aspects of this phone from a technical perspective, and I'm also going to give you my experience after using the phone for about a month. But anyways, that said, and before I start, let's talk about the different versions of the Pixel 9 Pro you can buy. Right now, the phone is available in two different sizes at 6.3 and 6.8 inches with 4 different color variations. You have obsidian black, hazel gray, porcelain white, and rose quartz. As you can see, it also has 4 different storage options: 128 gigs, 256 gigs, 512 gigs, and 1,000 gigabytes of storage or 1 terabyte. Now, as always, you have an Amazon link with the best price available for the Pixel 9 Pro down below in the description, just in case at the end of the video you want to buy it or take a look. Okay, now that said, let's move on with what I believe is one of the best components on this phone, which, as you can see, is the exterior design. This is one of my favorite looking phones, I think, that I've ever seen in my life. It is a very good looking design. As you can see, it is slightly upgraded as opposed to the old Pixel 8 and 8 Pro. It shares the same idea, the same core design, but it has been tweaked. Now we have a sort of rounded camera module that looks a little bit more futuristic, but we retain the same overall shapes, the same curves, the same materials. It still feels really, really good in the hand. I mean, it's not as boxy as some of the other phones like the S24 Ultra, although, as you can see, it still has relatively flat corners all around the phone that feel really, really nice in the hand. I also believe this may be the perfect big size phone. With 6.8 inches, the big Pixel 9 Pro XL, I think, is the perfect size for a big flagship device. But anyways, that said, and a little bit more specifically, we have 6.02 inches by 2.83 inches by 0.33 inches on the smaller 6.3 inch version of the phone with a weight of 199 grams, and we have 6.41 inches by 3.02 inches by 0.33 inches, so the same girth as the smaller version, on the 6.8 inch XL version of the phone with 221 grams. Of course, it being a top-tier phone, it has IP68 water and dust resistant of up to 1.5 meters for 30 minutes, and it also has wireless charging, which we'll take a look at later, but yeah, it has all the flagship technologies you would expect. As you can see, when it comes to the materials, it is made out of matte glass on the back, which feels really, really smooth in the hand. This is something very subtle that I always comment, but not all matte glass phones feel the same. I think my top 2 would be the S20. Well, the Samsung phones are usually all very soft, but I think the Pixel is a little softer. It feels really, really nice. As you can see, the sides are shiny. They are made out of stainless steel, and they contain more or less the same I/O we've gotten in the past couple years. On the right side, we get the volume rocker. Above it, we get the the on and off switch, which, by the way, feel really good. Both of these buttons feel really, really tactile and satisfying to the touch. Then we get 2 5G antennas right here. We get another antenna, a 5G sensor, and a microphone at the top. Then we get 2 antennas on the other side, on the left side, and this weird, annoying European logo that has to be on the phone by law, so they can't take it away, but it's very ugly. And then, as you can see at the bottom of the phone, we get a USB-C 3 port. We get a very loud speaker, which we'll take a look at later. We get another 5G antenna, and we get the SIM ejection tool with another microphone. By the way, these are not the only 2 microphones. They are just the ones we can see on the side, but there's more microphones hidden around the phone so we can get proper spatial audio. The only one that I was actually able to find is this one that's on the camera module, but yeah, there's a couple microphones on the phone. These are just the ones that are visible. Now, as you can see, this is probably the most controversial component on the phone. The cameras are a little bit inconsistent. They don't look like the ones on the iPhone, which look sort of like they all look the same size and the same shape. These are like one's bigger, there's another one that's smaller, there's this one that's rectangular. They look like very weird, and some people like it, some people don't. I actually think it gives the phone a lot of personality and it looks really good in my opinion, but yes, some people will probably think it doesn't look as attractive as the iPhone or as the Samsung phone with more even cameras. Now, moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit more about one of the exterior components on the Pixel 9 Pro. In this case, I want to talk about the speakers and the microphones on this phone. As I said earlier, this phone has one microphone here at the bottom, but it also has one microphone which is almost invisible to the eye. It's like this little thin bar right here between the display and the bezel. That of course enables stereo audio. We have multiple speakers so we can get a more immersive experience when listening to movies, songs, or whatever we want. Now, of course, like many other flagship phones, it doesn't have a headphone jack, so we are only able to connect headphones via USB-C and via Bluetooth. But the good news is that, as you'll see later in the connectivity section, it has the latest Bluetooth standard, so even though you don't get access to a headphone jack, you get the best Bluetooth connectivity available. So very good quality and very fast connections. Now that said, and as I always do, I'm going to perform a little test. I'm going to play a couple songs from different music genres with my professional studio microphone facing directly at the phone, so you can see in practical terms how good or bad the speakers on the Pixel 9 Pro actually are. But anyways, that said, and as we always do, let's take a look at the sound and vibration settings on the phone. So as you can see, we have the typical master sound and vibration settings for media, calls, notifications, alarms. You know, this is the standard things you can see on pretty much every phone, but there's a couple interesting settings here that I want to show you. First of all, now we have a new option called Now Playing, and this is basically like the Shazam app we've had for many years, but it's been integrated with the phone. So if you turn on Identify Songs Playing Nearby, you're going to download a small database of songs, and automatically from that point on, every time there's a song playing in the background and your Pixel 9 or 9 Pro is turned on, it will identify that song and tell you which song that is without you having to do anything. In fact, if you enable Show Search button on lock screen, it will show you right on the lock screen. So whenever you turn on your phone because you wanted to search for the song, it's already there. The song already identified it, looked for it, and you can just tab and it's going to send you to the song on Spotify, on YouTube, or anywhere you want. In fact, as a little demo, let me play a song so you can see in real time how it shows up here at the bottom of the phone when it's turned off, technically, or the display is off at least. Boom, there it is. It only took a couple seconds. Royalty, as you can see, the same song. If we turn the phone back on, we can tap here, unlock the device, and it's going to send us directly to Spotify, YouTube, as I said, so we can search or get the phone if we like it. Now, another very interesting new feature is right here on vibration and haptics. As you can see, we can use vibrations and haptics for either replacing sounds or enhancing those sounds so they are a little bit more obvious. But a lot of times things can get a little hectic. When you get a phone call and the phone starts vibrating like crazy and making a lot of noises, it can cause a jump scare and it's kind of uncomfortable. So there's a new feature called Vibrate First and then Ring Gradually, which is turned off by default, but I highly recommend you turn on. What this is going to do is it's going to soothe in the vibrations and soothe in the noises so it is a little bit less annoying, less abrupt. Oh, and also here, if you tap on adaptive vibration and you turn the feature on, the phone will identify where it is located and it will vary the level of vibration depending on that placement. So as you can see in the video, if it's on a cushiony couch, it's going to vibrate more. And if it's on a hard desk, it is going to vibrate less, aiming to be a little bit more convenient than it is when the feature is turned off. And well, of course, this being a Google Pixel, we also have some AI features. If you tap here on live caption and you turn the feature on, the phone will automatically translate what you're saying, the audio, into written words automatically and in a very easy, convenient, and accurate way, thanks to AI. The cool thing here is that because this is a system implemented feature, it will be available in every app. So you don't have to download specific tools or use it in specific apps. If the app lets you access the keyboard, you will be able to access live captions on that app. But anyways, that said, I wanted to talk a little bit about the display on the Pixel 9 Pro because it's probably one of the most striking features on the phone. I remember back in the day when I got the Pixel 7, which was my first Google Pixel phone, I didn't really like the display. It was a little too low resolution. The colors were a little off. When you had the phone off axis, it had weird colors. But this year, at least with the Pixel 9 Pro, that's no longer the case. This display is up to par with the S24 Ultra, the iPhones. This is an incredible looking display. More specifically, we have an LTPO OLED display with 120 Hz. We have HDR10+. We have 2000 nits of baseline brightness, and we have 3000 nits of peak brightness. This is the brightest phone that I've ever seen. The small 6.3 inches device has a 1280 by 2856 pixel resolution with a 20:9 ratio and 495 pixels per inch. Oh, and the screen to body ratio is 87.6%. And then for the bigger 6.8 inch brother, we have a 1344 times 2992 pixels resolution, a 20:9 ratio, and 486 pixels per inch, with a screen to body ratio of 88%. As you saw, there are very little differences between the bigger brother and the smaller brother, mainly being that the small one has a little bit higher pixels per inch or pixel density, and then the bigger brother has a slightly better aspect ratio with an 88% ratio instead of an 87.6 ratio, which once again is almost identical. Now, beyond specific numbers, as you can see, the display looks really, really good. You'll see it now throughout the video. And it has really good viewing angles, up to par, as I said, with the other flagship phones. The special thing that caught my attention is that it doesn't have any weird colors off axes, which is the hardest thing to do with an OLED display, to make it look as good when it is tilted as it does when it is facing you directly. That's a very hard thing to do, and that's what determines when a panel is high quality or not. But anyways, that said, now I'm going to take everything that I've said into practice. I'm going to play a 4K video here on YouTube so you can actually see how good or bad the display actually looks. So I'm going to zoom in on the display so we get as much quality as possible. And I'm going to perform the test with the lights turned on so you can see how it looks with light interference. And then I'm going to turn the studio lights off so you can see the most accurate representation of how the display looks in real life. Okay, what do you think? Did you like how the display looks? Did you not like it? Please tell me in the comments. But that said, of course, we also have to take a look at the display settings on the phone. So let's tap here on display and touch. Of course, we get the typical display settings like brightness, auto brightness, the dark theme, we can turn it on or off. But there is also some interesting settings I want you to take a look at. So first of all, if you swipe all the way to the bottom, you'll see screen resolution, which as you can see right now, I have it in full resolution at 1344 by 2992. But for some weird reason, the phone automatically by default will set the resolution at 1008 by 2244 resolution, which is noticeably less. I'm not really sure why, but I highly recommend you put it in full resolution since the battery life drainage is not going to be that different. Also here, a little bit above, you'll see auto rotate screen, which is a feature we've had for a long time. If you turn it on, the phone will detect automatically if the phone is in horizontal or landscape mode and adapt accordingly. But now we get a new feature called face detection. If you turn the feature on, the phone will use data from the front-facing camera to better determine if the phone is on horizontal or vertical mode and adapt both a little bit faster and a little bit more reliably, so to say. Also here, back on the main display and touch settings, if you tap on navigation mode, you'll see you have the two different navigation modes, the 3-button layout, which is the classic one, and the new gesture mechanism. But very interestingly, if you tap on the wheel that's available for gesture navigation, you'll see there is a new icon called Swipe to Invoke Assistant. This can be very, very handy because by default, you don't actually have a physical way to invoke the assistant. You actually have to say OK Doodle to activate it because it doesn't activate with any combination of buttons. If you turn this on, you can actually swipe from the bottom corners to activate the assistant, both the left and right one, so you don't have to say the phrase to activate the assistant every time. Oh, and also I think that by default you won't see the always on display on your phone, so you have to come to lock screen and then scroll down to always show time and info, which is the always on display, and turn it on. This is very useful because this way you can actually see the fingerprint area right here without having to unlock the phone. So with one tap, you can actually unlock the device without having to do the double tap to then see the display and then swipe back and then tap. It's a little bit more convenient. Now, that said, of course, we also have to talk about the unlocking and security mechanisms for the Pixel 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL. So, like in pretty much every other phone, we have the option to use a password or a pattern to unlock the device. but this can be a little too slow. So we can also use a fingerprint sensor or a fingerprint. Well, we can use a fingerprint with a fingerprint sensor to unlock the device in a much faster way. You just have to tap here and it automatically unlocks. But there is actually a third mechanism that I don't actually recommend, but that you need to know. So if you come to security, there it is, security and privacy, and then tap on device unlock, you'll have 3 different options to unlock your device. In this case, we have a PIN or a pattern that we can set up. I think this option has to be always set up before we can set up any of the other 2. Then we can use a fingerprint, and then we can use, as you can see, a facial unlock. Now, as I said, I don't recommend using facial unlock because we only use one camera to detect the patterns on your face. So it is very easy to replace your face with another 3D mask or something, even a picture, and unlock the phone. So I don't actually recommend you use it. But if you want to set it up, it's very easy. You just have to tap on face unlock, then tap here on I agree, then start. Then as you can see, you just have to do a little movement like you do on the swipe up. There it is. Swipe up again, swipe down. And in a couple seconds, the feature is going to be set up. But I'm actually going to disable it now because, as I said, it's not safe at all. I highly recommend you use both a password and then the fingerprint sensor. Now, also, as you can see on the main security and privacy page, we have this very useful banner that tells you if your device is or is not at risk, and it also tells you exactly why that is. In this case, I think it's because my location is turned off, and that's not safe. It applies for app security, device unlock, account security, device finders, and system and updates. All of these things, if not properly taken care of, could cause a security issue, so the device is going to notify you if everything is okay or if there's anything you have to change. Okay, now probably one of the most controversial components on the Pixel 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL is the processor. These 2 phones have, let's say, a relatively underpowered processor if we compare it to the other alternatives from the same price range and the same year, mainly the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 16 Pro. More specifically, it is called the Tensor G4 chip, the latest Google processor for their phones and tablets, that even though it's not slow by any means, it will allow you to perform every single task you want on your device, and it will do great. You'll see it later. It is a little underperforming, especially when it comes to the benchmarks and the numbers, as opposed to those other phones. The good news, though, is that this phone has 16 gigabytes of RAM. It is actually really impressive. Most phones come with 8 or 12, unless you get a special version that comes with 16 at the expense of, spending a lot more money. But the Pixel 8 Pro and Pro XL come with 16 gigs in all of the versions with all of the storage capacities. It is really amazing, and that's going to sort of make up for the processor not being as fast as the other phones, because as many of you know, the more RAM we have, the more apps it takes for the phone to get overloaded, and therefore the more things we can do before the phone slows down. So theoretically, a lot of times this phone could actually feel faster than some of these other phones, even though it has a slower processor because it has more RAM. But anyways, that said, and as always, to make sure that the phone actually works in practical terms, I ran a couple of tests so we could measure the speed, the power, and the temperatures the phone hit in the meantime. So the first thing that I did was booting the phone up, which is not very telling when it comes to how fast the phone is going to be. Some phones are really fast booting up, but then they're slow, and some others are quite literally the opposite. But even then, I wanted to take a look, and it was kind of slow. It took 37 seconds to boot up, and the phone, after booting up, went from room temperature, which was 20 degrees Celsius, to 26 degrees Celsius, which is around 78.8 Fahrenheit. And then after that, I ran the Geekbench 6 test, which is the most famous CPU test for phones, because I wanted to take a look at the numbers. As I said earlier, this phone is a little underpowered as opposed to the other competitors. So I wanted to take a look at the specific numbers. How much is it lacking as opposed to those other phones? The test took 5 minutes and 34 seconds. And after that, the phone reached 32 degrees Celsius, or 89.6 Fahrenheit, which is quite an interesting temperature after just booting the phone up and running Geekbench. Oh, and by the way, just in case you're interested, these are the results from the S24 Ultra and the iPhone 16 Pro, which, as I said earlier, are noticeably better than the ones we got on the Pixel. This doesn't necessarily correlate with real-life performance, but it's very telling. The iPhone actually, I think, is more than double the performance as opposed to the Pixel. It's very, very impressive. Now, after that, of course, I ran a CPU test, so I had to run a GPU test. In this case, I chose Wildlife, which is the most popular GPU test that I know of. In this case, it is a 1-minute test, so the time doesn't actually matter. The phone took a minute to complete, and the temperature kind of stabilized, only going up to 33.4 degrees Celsius or 92.12 Fahrenheit. After that, I wanted to go again, so I tried Wildlife Extreme, which, like the name suggests, is a more extreme version of Wildlife. Again, it is a 1-minute test, so the test only took 1 minute. There's no discrepancies between phones there. And after that 1 minute, the phone was at 34 degrees Celsius or 93.2 Fahrenheit. Which, by the way, something that I didn't mention before is that I ran all of these tests consecutively, so the temperature is going to get a little higher and higher as we go on. After this, I opened 8 more apps, not necessarily to see how much time they took to open, because right now every flagship phone takes under a second to open most apps, but more so to see how many apps were kept in the background. As I said, this phone has 18 gigabytes of RAM, so it should perform incredibly when it comes to multitasking. Surprisingly, 9 of the apps remained open without any issues, but one of the apps, the first one indeed, got closed, which, don't get me wrong, is a really good result. 9 out of 10 is really good, but I was actually surprised. I was actually hoping the phone would keep all the apps open since, as I said, it has a lot of RAM. After this, the phone went up to 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit. Now, once I finished with normal apps, I moved on to gaming. I didn't want to let the phone breathe because I wanted to stress it as much as I could, so I moved on immediately to Genshin Impact. In this case, I spent 2 minutes playing the game, with, of course, no surprises, a really, really good performance. The phone felt incredibly smooth. The game felt incredibly smooth. There was absolutely no issues. And at the end, surprisingly, the phone lowered its temperature. So it went from 35 to 34 degrees Celsius or 93.2 Fahrenheit. This actually speaks a lot about the phone efficiency, because when the phone is not doing something demanding, it takes very little time for the phone to start decreasing the temperature to go back to normal. After this, I spent 2 minutes playing Helix Jump, which is another casual phone game. And of course, once again, no surprises. The performance was incredibly smooth, incredibly reliable. There was no issues, no bugs. Everything ran incredibly well. And after those 2 minutes, the phone was at 33 degrees Celsius and 91.4 Fahrenheit. So even lower than it was before. Now, after this, I played 2 races in Asphalt 9 at maximum settings. As many of you know, Asphalt 9 is probably the most popular racing game for iOS and Android. And since the game was playing at maximum settings, we are technically back to performance-heavy activities. The way the phone felt, of course, was incredible. This is a relatively old game, and it doesn't actually demand that much from the phone, so performance was incredibly smooth and great. It felt fine, and the loading times were really fast. But at the end, we went from 33 degrees to 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit. After this, I started playing the phone killer, Genshin Impact, more specifically 2 minutes at medium settings. The performance was actually a little underwhelming because it didn't feel as smooth as I was expecting it to play, although to be fair, I am used to playing at 120 FPS on the iPhone, and as many of you know, that option is not available on Android phones, so I was only able to play at 60 FPS, which technically could make the phone feel a little bit less smooth than I am used to, but yeah, there were no heavy bugs, no heavy hiccups. It's just that the phone was not, I guess, playing at the frame rate that I'm used to. But yeah, performance was fine. That said, after only 2 minutes, the phone went from 35 degrees to 38 degrees Celsius, which is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. After this, I moved on to high settings. So another 2 minutes of Genshin Impact, in this case at high settings, 60 FPS. And surprisingly, the performance was absolutely identical. There were no changes in performance from medium to high, which technically is great news. It means you can raise the graphic bar and play at a much better visual fidelity without getting any compromises in fluidity. But the biggest fear that I had and that I was starting to notice was that the phone was getting a little bit warmer. Or so did I think, because after 2 minutes of playing Genshin Impact in high settings, the phone was back to 37 degrees Celsius and 98.6 Fahrenheit. So it lowered the temperature a little bit. That was actually surprising. And it says, once again, a lot about the phone's efficiency. I've had other Android and iOS phones go up to 45 degrees Celsius playing Genshin Impact after only 1 or 2 minutes. After that, I played 2 minutes of Genshin Impact at maximum settings and 60 FPS. Once again, surprisingly, the performance was absolutely identical to high and medium, with the added benefit to better graphical fidelity. There were no hiccups, no bugs, the phone ran very, very smooth, and it was really, really nice, at least for once, because I don't think this has ever happened before on any of the other phones that I've tried. It was really nice to play this game without feeling like the phone was burning in my hands. After 2 minutes of playing at maximum settings, which by the way totals 6 minutes in Genshin Impact, after a lot of other heavy-duty tasks, the phone was at 37.5 degrees Celsius and 99.5 Fahrenheit, which is a really, really good temperature. In fact, out of all the flagships that I own, the iPhone 16 Pro, the Pixel, the S24, the S24 Ultra, I have plenty more, but I don't have them here right now. The Pixel 9 Pro is the one that's given me the lowest, by far, temperatures when playing Genshin Impact, and that's really, really impressive. Okay, and finally, it is time to talk about the battery life. One of my favorite features on the Pixel 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL. So first of all, let me give you a couple numbers. For the 6.3 smaller brother, we have a 4700 milliamp hour battery, and we can do 27 watt wired charging, which gives you up to 55% in 30 minutes. We can do 21 watt wireless charging, and we can do 12 watt wireless charging with QI compatible chargers. Then for the bigger brother, which is the one that I have right here, we have a 5060 milliamp hour battery, and we can do 37 watts wired, which gives you 70% in 30 minutes. Then we can do 23 watts wireless charging with a Pixel stand and 12 watt wireless charging with any other QI stand. But those are just the numbers. What about my experience? Well, after, as I said, using the phone for about a month, I can tell you the battery life on this phone is incredibly good. I was actually not expecting it to be so good because back in the day, I didn't really have a particularly incredible experience when it comes to battery life with my older Pixel devices. Usually those phones were not as good as the Samsung or Apple counterpart, but this year, that is not the case. The Pixel, at least the one that I have right here, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, has a really, really good battery life. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that anybody could get up to 2 days because there's some very heavy users out there, but at least for me, for like a casual user that's not doing super incredibly demanding things on their phone, you can get up to 2 days of usage. I mean, I use my phone for about like 5 hours a day, so I'm not a casual user by any means. And as I said, even then, I got up to 2 days of usage with this phone. I mean, of course, you have to take into account that this is the bigger phone, and usually the bigger phones have a slightly better battery life, but I'm pretty sure that the 6.3-inch Pixel 9 Pro is also going to give you an amazing experience. Now, that said, of course, we also have to talk a little bit about the software, which is probably the main reason why most people buy the phone. Not necessarily because of Android, but because of all the Android features and AI features that are included on Pixel phones. So, of course, the classic one is the photo and video processing, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail in the photo and video section, but That's one of the main headline features. The processing this phone does to photos and videos is amazing. Then, of course, we have a stellar assistant this year because Google has combined the classic assistant with Gemini and with their image generator app or AI. So you have those three apps combined into one for like a ultra good and useful assistant. So you can do the basic assistant tasks, you can ask more complex questions, and you can generate images in the same conversation. Let me show you. Okay, Google, what's the weather like in New York? There it is, gives me the weather in New York. Okay, Google, what do you think about stoicism? And it gives me a more complex answer that would have not been possible before with the basic assistant. And we can do, okay, Google, create an image of a dog being bitten by a bigger animal. And it's going to generate an image in a couple seconds of a dog. Well, maybe this time, because it's a weird prompt, it's not going to give me a very accurate result. Let's take a look. Oh, yeah. A bigger animal, which I'm not sure what this is. I think this is the animal that was the bad animal on The Lion King. Not sure of the name of the animal, of the species. Biting a dog automatically in a couple seconds. It's incredible. On top of this, we also get circle to search like we got last year on Samsung phones, the S24 and S24 Ultra. So we can search anything that is displayed in our phone. We get a bunch of other AI features like, for example, there's many. I'm not sure I can name all of them because there's plenty features. We can do, for example, AI generated wallpapers. So we can create a prompt and the phone is going to generate different versions of that prompt. So we can get a customized wallpaper, as you can see. It takes very little time, by the way. I'm not sure if the processing is done on the device or in the cloud, but there it is. Most prompts take very, very little time. So you can see we've created 4 different versions of a surreal boat made of a chenille in shades of green and teal. 4 versions of the same thing that we can use as wallpapers. High resolution, by the way. We also have an incredible photo editor, which is probably one of my favorite AI features on the phone. So if you tap on edit, and then you tap on the AI icon right here, you access this little editor menu that doesn't actually seem like an editor menu, but as you can see, you can auto frame it, you can change the sky, you can change the picture to look like it was taken in golden hour. There is a lot of things you can do. You can even circle here anywhere you want on the display, tap on reimagine, and add anything you want, like a UFO. Let's add a UFO to the sky on this picture. As I said, it takes very little time. There it is, a couple seconds, and it's going to create a couple images trying to, well, these are not accurate at all. I did it yesterday and it actually created, well, that's just bad. Not sure what this is, but yesterday it did a much better job. This is AI, so these things happen. But yeah, it's very, very impressive. Something that's also very important. It works incredibly well, although I don't think anybody doubted that because that's one of the headline features of this phone. Since it has clean Android, it doesn't have any launchers on top. It usually has a very smooth, very fluid experience. So yes, great, great software for the Pixel 9 Pro, which by the way, I think I'm not sure about the specific number, but I think it has 7 years of updates from the moment it came out. So another great thing about the software on this phone. I think this is one of the best parts of buying a Google Pixel phone. But anyways, that said, let's talk a little bit about connectivity on the Pixel 9 Pro. In this case, and as I said earlier, we have 5G thanks to the 5G antennas. Of course, we have the latest Wi-Fi standard. In this case is Wi-Fi 7. And we have Bluetooth 5.3, which is, once again, the latest Bluetooth standard. Thankfully, right now, nowadays, most flagship phones, or all flagship phones that I've tried at least, share all these specs. These are the latest and greatest specs for a phone. And because this is an over $1,000 phone, it has those specs. What I'm actually a little bit more interested in are the improvements in the network and internet settings. As many of you know, this is a software-focused phone, so many of the improvements are not going to be found on the hardware, but on the software. So the first thing that I want to show you is how to enable Wi-Fi calls, which is basically a way to make phone calls, traditional phone calls, using your Wi-Fi or your 4G, 5G connections. In this case, to enable it, you just have to tap here on Internet. Then you want to tap on the settings for your cellular connection right here. And then you want to scroll down to 4G calling, which enables calls with 4G connectivity. But if you keep scrolling down, you'll find Wi-Fi calling. If you tap there and turn it on, you'll set up Wi-Fi calling. So if you're connected to any Wi-Fi and you make or receive a phone call, you won't be wasting any cellular data because you'll be making that phone call through the Wi-Fi connection. Now, I believe this is available in most countries, but if you live outside of the US or Europe, it is likely that in your country, this is not a thing yet. In that case, you won't see the option in your network connectivity settings. Now, another one of the settings that you need to take a look at is the VPN. This is not a new thing, and I'm pretty sure most Google Pixel owners know about this, but if you own a Google Pixel phone, you get access to Google's VPN for free. And turning it on is really easy. You just have to tap here on VPN by Google, tap here on Use VPN, and in a matter of seconds, you'll be connected to the VPN. And that's it. Your connection will be completely secured. That's it. VPN is connected. Every Google search or every internet search that I do will be protected by the VPN. So if you want to do something that's a little sketchy, like going on a maybe a dubious website or more dubious app download or whatever it is that you fear could compromise your phone's security, boom, turn on the VPN by Google for free. Do that thing, and then you can turn it back off or keep it permanently turned on if you don't want to do any online gaming. And well, of course, beyond those new settings, everything else is more or less the same. You have the option to choose your internet connection between Wi-Fi and cellular. You have the option to choose between 4G, 5G. You have the option to do airplane mode, hotspot. And of course, you can do a little bit more advanced settings for your Wi-Fi connections, so you can set it up exactly how you want it to be. Okay, now, as many of you know, the main reason why most people buy Google Pixel phones is because they take really, really good photos. More specifically, because the processing of the photos done by the phone is really, really good, and it makes a normal casual phone photo look really, really amazing. It is the software once again. Now, the cool thing about this phone, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, is that on top of having those software capabilities, it also has really good hardware. In this case, we have 3 cameras on the back. We get a main camera with 50 megapixels. That's relatively big. These are actually the specific measurements for those of you who are interested in the nitty-gritty data. Then we have a 48 megapixel periscope telephoto camera with a 5x augmentation, so a 5x zoom. And these are the specific numbers for that camera. Also relatively impressive, although I have to say the zoom camera is probably the least interesting camera on the phone. And last but not least, right here we have a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera with this specs right here. Of course, not as impressive as the main camera settings, but still pretty remarkable. It being a flagship phone, it has an LED flash, auto HDR, panoramic capabilities, and it can record 8K video up to 30 FPS, 4K video up to 60 FPS, and 1080p video up to 240 FPS. And by the way, for those of you interested on more professional video, it can record with a 10-bit depth, so 10-bit video, which is great, as many of you know, for color grading because it has a lot more information. Now, last but not least, here at the front, it has a 42 megapixel camera with this specs right here, which is probably the most surprising camera. Maybe not for the specs when it comes to the sensor size and the optics, but more so because it has 42 megapixels. I think it's because they wanted to do pixel sampling so they could take better photos, but yeah, a lot of megapixels for a selfie camera. That can, by the way, also do 4K up to 60 FPS and 1080p up to 60 FPS. Now, when it comes to the actual camera app, things have also gotten a little bit more interesting this year with the new Pixel 9 Pro and 9 Pro XL because we have more software features. Once again, what a surprise, software features on a Google Pixel phone. As you can see on top of the classic camera settings to control focus, white balance, shadows, brightness, aperture, all of these things, we also have a couple settings that are more software focused or processing focused. So if you're in photo, video, and with any of the cameras, you can just tap here on the wheel and you'll get a couple of settings or a couple of tweaks for that specific camera. So for example, if you are in photo mode using the main camera and you tap here, you'll have general and pro settings. In this case, we have the option to enable a night photography mode. So we can do nothing, we can do night shift, and we can use the flash. Then you also have the option to select a top shot, which, like the name suggests, it sort of lets you take multiple pictures and then select your favorite one, which you can turn off. You can turn on in auto mode, so the phone is going to choose when to do it and when not to do it. And then you can turn it on so it always takes a couple photos and chooses the best one. You have the option to set a timer. You can set the focus. You can change the aspect ratio. You only have 2 options for some reason. And then on the Pro settings, you can change the resolution, you can change the format or the codecs, and then you can choose between auto lens selection or manual lens selection, which is going to fix the lens, as you can see, so you cannot accidentally change between them. Now, as I said, depending on the camera you're on, you'll see that some of these photos are different, although for photo, mainly all of the cameras have the same functionalities. But then if you switch to video, as you can see, there's a couple more settings you can choose and a bunch of different settings too. So you can change the flash, you can turn on video boost, which is a very useful feature that's new for Google Pixel phones. What this is going to do is it's going to let you capture a video and then it's going to use AI to improve that video so you can get better quality. As you can see, when video boost is off, we have certain options like 10-bit HDR or macro focus, but when we turn it on, they disappear because we cannot select those specific parameters when the feature is on. Then we can select between 4K, 8K, and 1080p. We can choose the frame rate. We can choose the type of video stabilization. And something that you should also know is that technically on paper, if you're in photo mode or video mode, and you shake the phone like this, it should automatically switch between the front-facing camera and the rear camera. But for some reason, I was not able to make it work on my device, and I have tried. I spent like 30 minutes trying to figure it out, but seems like the feature is not working. But technically on paper, one of the new features is that you can shake it like this, and it's automatically going to switch cameras. Now, when it comes to the main photo and video modes, starting from the left, we have panoramic photos, a classic, which by the way, we can use for photo and video. We have night shift, which is one of the modes I showed you earlier, but that's now fixated for the camera. So whether you use photo or video, those photos or videos are going to be enhanced for nighttime photography or nighttime video. Then you have normal photo, normal portrait, which is photo with processing to make more depth of field or create more depth of field. Then you have Add Me, which is another one of these cool AI features that lets you basically take a photo and leave some elements permanently in that photo, and then bring, as you can see, more elements into that picture, which can be very useful if you want to take a group photo and someone has to take the picture, but then they don't appear in the photo. Well, now with Add Me, they will be able to be in the picture. Then you have long exposure, which is a mode specifically for pictures where you want to capture more light. So you tap here and then it takes a couple seconds and it captures a lot of information, a lot of light. I suggest you only use this at night with very bad lighting conditions. And then we have Action Pan, which is basically a mode where you can have some extra stabilization so you can track objects that are moving at a very fast pace. Now that said, as always, I'm going to show you a badge of photos and videos taken with all of the cameras so you can be the judge of how good or how bad the cameras on these phones actually are. And well, of course, after that, I'll come back to give you my conclusions. As you've seen throughout the video, the phone is packed with really good features. It has a really good looking design, it has a great display, it has amazing software features, really good cameras. I think the only flaw could be that the processor is maybe not up to par with what we can see on Samsung phones or on iPhones, but besides that, everything else is incredibly good. The price is, I think it's a little cheaper as we saw earlier than those Samsung and Apple phones, which makes sense. It is not as powerful, so it should not have the same top tier price. This phone is going to be great for those of you who prefer the way that it looks as opposed to the Samsung counterpart and don't really care about that extra performance because you're not going to do that many demanding things on the phone. Or for those of you who really value the extra AI features and software features you get on the Pixel. For those of you, yes, I think this phone as a flagship device is worth it. You have an Amazon link down below in the description with the best price that I found. And well, now that the video is about to end, I recommend you go take a look.